for the next segment where we will be playing pre-recorded speeches. But before that, I promise you that you are going to have some entertainment, and here we go. I'm going to play now online a music video that is all produced by myself.
Thank you. Very good.
目を閉じて何も見えず悲しくて目を開ければ荒野に向かう道より他に見えるものはなしああ砕け散る定めの星たちよせめてひそやかにこの身を照らせよ我は行く青白き頬のままで我は行くさらばすばるよ息をすれば胸の中木枯らしは泣き続けるされど我が胸は熱く夢を追い続けるなりああさんざめく名もなき星たちよせめてさやかにこの身を追われよ我も行く心のめいずるままに我も行くさらばすばるよいつの日か誰かがこの道をいつの日か誰かがこの道を我は行く青白き頬のままでさらばすばるよ我は行くさらばすばる
Well, now it's the time to play the pre-recorded speeches. The first segment of the pre-recorded speeches are contributed by the speakers from Singapore, and I'm going to now share that with you. The world we live in hardly enjoys any harmony, all because of flawed perceptions locked in a Cold War mentality. As tensions between China and the West continue to heat up, China has become the target of attacks by the US-led Western countries. This is because many in the West perceive China as a threat to American dominance in the world. This perception is totally flawed. As the conflict in Ukraine is playing out, Russia has become the target of attacks and endless sanctions by the US-led Western countries. Again, this is because the West perceives Russia as a threat to their security and the American dominance in the world. This perception is totally flawed too. But precisely because of flawed perceptions held by the major players in the world, we live in a world that is troubled with Cold War mentality, and flashpoints have already turned into armed conflicts. A new harmony of the world we live in can only begin to surface when the US-led Western countries realize their flawed perceptions. The fact is, China is becoming more influential in world affairs by growing economically. But why shouldn't China grow? Is it not a human right to seek a better life? But China is certainly not a threat to America militarily, nor has China any desire to deprive the American people of a good life. But America, with its allies, is putting up a concerted effort to put China down, to deprive the Chinese people a better life they are working very hard for. The fact is, Russia is feeling less and less secure due to the expansion of NATO eastward. But why should NATO expand eastward? Is it not the expansion of NATO that is moving its military infrastructure ever closer to the Russian border? It is a fact that over the past 30 years, Russia has been patiently trying to come to an agreement with the leading NATO countries regarding the principles of equal and indivisible security in Europe. But America, with its allies, is putting up a concerted effort to put Russia down, to deprive the Russian people security within Europe that they desire so very much. The collapse of the Soviet Union led to a redivision of the world, as well as the norms of international law, which became the whims of those who declared themselves the winners of the Cold War. A state of euphoria created by the feeling of absolute superiority coupled with arrogance resulted in self-serving decisions that ignore the concerns of others. A bloody military operation was waged against Belgrade without the UN Security Council's sanction. During the NATO bombing of Yugoslavia, 5 guided bombs hit the People's Republic of China embassy in Belgrade, killing 3 Chinese journalists and outraging the Chinese people. The Chinese were told, CIA had identified the wrong coordinates for a Yugoslav military target on the same streets. Then came the turn of Iraq, Libya, and Syria. In the invasion of Iraq without any legal ground, we witnessed lies made at the highest state level and voiced from the high UN rostrum. The illegal use of military power against Libya and the distortion of all the UN Security Council decisions on Libya ruined the country and pushed it towards a humanitarian catastrophe into the vortex of a civil war which has continued there for years. A similar fate was also prepared for Syria. The combat operations conducted by the Western coalition in that country without the Syrian government's approval or UN Security Council sanction can only be defined as intervention. Witnessing NATO's 5 rounds of expansion eastward, should Russia not be concerned? Overall, it appears that nearly everywhere in many regions of the world where the United States brought its law and order, this created bloody, non-healing wounds and the curse of international terrorism and extremism. In 1972, Richard Nixon's visit to China opened the door for the formation of diplomatic relations between the world's richest country and the world's most populous country. It also ended 25 years of no communication or diplomatic ties between the two countries, shifting the power dynamics of the Cold War and playing a part in China's transition from impoverished isolation to a new role as an economic partner to the United States and a growing global power. But 50 years on, the anniversary of Nixon's historic visit comes to a low point in US-China relations. Many in Washington now view China as a growing economic and military threat, while an increasingly assertive and nationalistic China has pushed back on what it sees as American interference in its affairs. China's economy will overtake the US. In terms of purchasing price parity, China's economy is already significantly bigger than that of the US. To that extent, China's success will challenge a conventional wisdom. That is, the only way is the Western way. China showed the world there is a Chinese way to progress and prosperity. China is viewed as a threat to a lot of people because of its sheer size and because of the unity of the people. However, does it mean that China wants to be a superpower the way the Soviet Union was or the way the US is? Has China ever passed judgment in other countries or wanted to export its governing system and its philosophy to others? No. China is a civilization. China is too ancient and wise to ever want such a thing. Throughout its entire history, numerous tribes from the north came inside the Middle Land to occupy territories, rule kingdoms, even the entire Middle Kingdom, only to become assimilated into the culture of the Middle Land, enriching this very civilization. It is a very different mentality from that of the West, which has a missionary tradition. The Americans, without embarrassment, call themselves an exceptional power with a manifest destiny, which is to spread its values to the whole world. China does not have such an instinct. It is not in its history. It is certainly not in its interest. One day, the US will realize that China's nature is different from the nature of the US.
and there is a greater possibility of coexistence and cooperation than putting China down. One day, the US will realize that Russia's nature is different from the nature of the USSR, and there too is greater possibility of coexistence and cooperation than proxy wars. A new harmony is within reach for mankind, but the Cold War mentality needs to change.
Hi everyone, happy World Speech Day. The title of my speech is Togetherness with a play on the word two, T-W-O, togetherness. I believe our world is in such chaos, disarray, and disharmony because we as individuals are trapped in relationships that don't bring us joy, meaning, fulfillment, content, or inspiration. And that begins at the most fundamental level, the love relationship. And that stems from lack of a shared vision and clash of core values. When that happens is when we inevitably turn outside to fulfill needs that cannot be met inside. And that's when we bring disharmony inside out. And when outside is seen to be more beautiful than inside, the conflict goes into concentric, vicious cycles. I wish I didn't have to go home. If only I could spend more time with you. Sounds familiar? Esther Perel, the relationship coach, says the quality of our lives is determined by the quality of our relationship. Agree? But many of us don't experience higher quality because we begin with the wrong foot, with society telling us who we are and what we should want, when instead we should appreciate others for what life is like for them, but embark on our own journey to learn about what makes us tick and what doesn't. And only then are we in a place to look for the significant other. Marriage is a symbol of unity, it is a union, and it is unitedness. Like any other relationship, it is about we. A marriage, though, is a relationship above all relationships. It is a relationship with the one whom I have a hope to realize my full potential and use that state of full potentialness to contribute to the world. Marriage is not always fun, laughter, and happiness, but it must deliver joy, meaning, fulfillment, content, and inspiration to both parties of the union. How does that happen? It is when two people are connected at the highest level of connection that can be experienced in togetherness, TWO, in mind, heart, soul, and body. Meaning that when both are stimulated intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually, for example, when you know what he's thinking, when he feels what you're feeling, and when she can sense that something is not okay with him, etc., one has then given up the I for the greater we. And in this higher connection, there is deep and sustaining passion and chemistry. And naturally, we would be drawn to connect physically and use our five senses to express to and impress upon one another what we mean to each other in mind, heart, and soul. That is the highest ultimate connection. That should deepen with time, but sadly for most, that's not the case. Many people will say, don't dream, get real. You are too choosy. Don't be too idealistic. They may mean well, but it took me a long time to realize that just because they don't dream my dream and they don't choose what I choose, that I should give up mine and go with the herd. And it also doesn't mean that I won't find my significant other. I believe that we must dream and dream big in life and most essentially in love, because nothing great ever happens in ordinariness. Dream big, but set small goals to work towards them. And if we think small, we will become smaller. When I look around me, I find so many people in marriages without unity. They live under the same roof but lead their own lives. I see people cheating, lying to their partners. I see infidelity, unfaithfulness, philandering, and I see relationships go south, starting with enduring unmet needs, and endurance turns into tolerance, meaning you endure pain and the pain grows and the endurance devolves into resentment and you try to tolerate. I see conflicts that are sometimes catastrophic. And I tend to believe that many people could have had the chance for a much better relationship had their self-awareness and partner selection process been better. I have my own 4 tenets of an ideal relationship, and I believe that we must know the answers before getting into any arrangements. Number 1, commitment to making each other top priority above and beyond anyone and anything else, and not just at the start, throughout the relationship. And if shared vision is what keeps us going and picks us up when we are down and out, and if shared values make the journey more harmonious, then there needs to be shared mission to implement practical actions and design measures that help us track our progress. That's commitment. And commitment includes, number 2, passion and chemistry. Many people say that passion and chemistry are just relationship kick starters and that it will not and need not stay. At the start, you can't wait to see and speak and be with someone. Why? Because that person has been in your mind, your heart, and your soul. Why? Because you've put in effort to be in their shoes, you've tried to feel what they are feeling, and your souls become mates. So it's only natural that the body follows. You have worked hard to create these experiences that make you choose to make a life together in the first place. Compatibility. But sadly, for many, once they have got someone, be it marriage, boyfriend, girlfriend, or just the bed, the efforts stop. Mission accomplished. Move on to other matters. Would you say to your teeth, for example, that, hey teeth, I've spent 50 times a day brushing you for the past 5 months, so no need to do so anymore because you're good, I'm good, and you shan't rot. But they do rot, right, when you stop brushing and you end up looking for a new set of teeth. Just like you end up looking for someone else for passion, chemistry, and compatibility when you stop working on the relationship. Number 3, being there for and being there with the significant other is essential. And again, this will naturally happen when number 1 has happened. Commitment to making each other top priority. Number 4 is shared core love values. But before we can share core values, we need to first know what our own values are. For example, I am a miser and you are a spendthrift. We will spend most of our lives in dispute about money matters that will spill over to other parts of our lives. And were I an asexual and you highly sexual, and worse, if I, the asexual, expect fidelity, then no measure to close the gap will lead to a sweet spot. Perhaps a bittersweet spot. And we need to be honest if that's truly acceptable or not, because we can't change anybody. Eli J. Finkel, a social psychology professor who studies romantic relationships, said that the average marriage has been getting worse over time, even as the best marriages have been getting better. And the best marriages in this era are much better than the best marriages of all other past eras. Why? Because there is a dramatic shift in the substance of people's expectations in their search for a significant other. In the past, people looked to marriage for survival, but today it is to meet the need for passion and intimacy and to facilitate voyages into self-discovery and personal growth. Finkel uses Maslow's analogy. Instead of calling it Maslow's triangle of needs, he calls it Mount Maslow. So at the very bottom, people used to marry for physiological reasons, still do. And in agrarian societies, they marry to gain more land so that they can plant, so that they can feed. And then when that is enough, the reasons shift to marrying for the smooth running of a household. And then after that, people marry for safety, for the sense of belonging, for love, and for esteem. And at the very peak, people marry for self-actualization. But because it is steep terrain and the higher you go, the thinner the air, not many can peak. Success at the highest altitude requires the investment of significant time and energy in the marriage. So to those here who can afford to, I would say dream, search, and work for a beautiful relationship with the one that you love, who loves you and wants what you want. And one by one, together, you will set examples for others to follow to make a more harmonious world. Thank you.
涙これでも夢よ枯れるな二度と咲かない花だけど夢のかけらをせめて心にあとはに散りばめ合わずに愛していつまでも会えば別れが辛くて泣ける恋のねぐらはどこにある鳥になりたいそっと心で紅の命を合わずに愛していつまでも 離れの定めに置かれ愛がなおさら強くなる何があってもすがりすがり生き抜くああ死にはしないわ会わずに愛していついつまでも
Well, that was a song that I recorded to entertain you. The next segment will be speeches that's made by overseas speakers. They come from different countries, including Malaysia and Canada and Australia.
That's a small wood. That's a small wood. Happy World Speech Day 2022. With the pandemic in the past 2 years, it's no wonder we are tired and we long to find a new harmony, a renewed balance of the before and after effects of the pandemic. Each of us have experienced the pandemic in a different way. We may have fears, undergone storms and conflicts. For some of us, the lockdown was inconvenient, but okay. Some of us have actually gained through the pandemic, enjoying working from home and finding more time to spend with their families. But for most of us, going through the lockdown, we feel trapped, confined in our own homes. Even when we go for groceries, we go alone instead of shopping or meeting up with friends. Public health authorities became the authority we turned to for rules on what was safe to do or not do. Standard operating procedures that the public need to of social distancing, wash their hands frequently, and to wear their masks. A hefty fine made sure we respected the rules. For some, they feel so frustrated at having their freedom restricted. Workers went on strike not to wear their face masks or refusing to follow rules for social distancing. They reject these public health measures despite being told it was too dangerous to gather together and we needed to avoid creating a more chaotic situation resulting in greater loss and more deaths. When the new vaccines became available, they gave us new hope that there would be a way out of the pandemic. The vaccine was sent to all countries around the world, and now most of the public have had 2 vaccines. Some have had the booster. It seems all would be well. But then there were those who refused to be vaccinated. They protested that this was an infringement on their freedom to choose for themselves. So again, we could not be certain the virus could be defeated. The reason for the pandemic is the many twists and turns that can surprise us. but through the many changes, the importance of following government health mandate continues to be paramount. For public health authorities, convincing the whole country to follow health rules is a challenging task. No one likes rules forced on them. So success in public health requires good communication skills. For me, I don't need any convincing. I've been first in line to be vaccinated, triple vaccinated, in fact. I do it to protect myself, but also do it because it's the right thing to do for the public good. When we get vaccinated, we help protect our elderly, the sick and frail, and our young children, all of whom are more prone to suffer serious illness if they contract the virus. We have to find a way to stand together, one for all, and all for one. Let's follow the public health guidelines. When the virus is defeated, no longer a tiger lurking in the woods, waiting to pounce, then will we have a new harmony in our homes, family, and in our work. Thank you.
My son grew up in the 90s with Ninja Turtles. Turtles were warriors trained by a revenge-bent rodent in an ancient form of warfare, forced to live among flowing streams of human waste and have to hide their real faces from the rest of the world. I was accused by many parents in my son's class. The turtles encourage violent and antisocial behavior amongst young children. As a busy working parent, I ignore their chatter and let my son indulge in all kinds of turtle figures. He even had ninja PJs, ninja lunchbox, and by the time he was 8, he had over 200 ninja soldiers. My son seems drawn to the turtle's adventuresome spirit, and I think to the idea that in fantasy, he could defend himself. At home, we used to talk about race and diversity a lot. We celebrated many cultures during important heritage days. Being half Asian and half Scottish, I was sometimes concerned he may see himself as different. I need not have worried at all. At grade 1, my son asked one day if he could invite his best friend for a sleepover. When the parents showed up, I was surprised to find that they were both of Métis descent, and their adopted son was black and had a slight stammer. The color difference, the visible disability, was invisible for my son, who only saw his best friend as someone who was fun to be with. As parents, we sometimes bring our own biases into our behavior and our conversations. We build walls and push people who are different away. When I first came to Canada in the 1970s, I felt the discrimination of being Asian. And it was lonely and sometimes scary, especially learning to face the challenges in a new country and fighting to succeed. In the US, the recent impact of anti-Black racism has led to a global movement, Black Lives Matter. So many companies these days are just recognizing the power in diverse teams and are creating equitable workplace where we can all grow and succeed and support each other. Work environments which increase the sense of belonging, of being safe, and of shared understanding. From supporting all kinds of unique differences, which include LGBTQ, single parents, people with mental illness, people with disabilities, seniors, to name just a few, we are reflecting our diverse demographics and diverse cultures. Our inclusive perspectives enrich our lives and create a new sense of belonging and a new harmony. I want to end by sharing a fragment of a poem by Robert Frost. Before I built a wall, I would like us to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was like to give offense, something that there is that doesn't love a wall that won't sit down. The sadness of every word speaks for itself. Prejudice is a wall we construct with our actions, with our thoughts, with our silence. If we all learn to embrace the unique resilience, global perspective, agility, and ability to learn that people that are different bring to the table, we will have a kinder world.
Today, I want to talk about living in harmony with our inner selves. And I think Paul Young puts this best quite beautifully when he said that wholeness is when the way that we live is in alignment with the truth of our being. When you live out and act out and speak out in the world the same as what you truly are and how you think, then you are in harmony. And I love the imagery that this presents: authenticity, wholeness, that yearning to fully fulfill our potential, but not only that, being true to ourselves. And Jordan Peterson, a clinical psychologist, also touches on this perspective, and he points out that if you don't find yourself in alignment with what you think and what you say and what you do, if you don't align those three things, you will find yourself in chaos and resentment and full of anger. And this sounds really intuitive and really resonates for me, but I still think it's a challenge. And I keenly felt this struggle when I was growing up. And this may be a common experience as part of growing up. But for me, I really felt the disconnect between who I presented to the world and who or what I really was. I presented as Mr. Nice Guy, as Mr. Responsible, the peacemaker, the mediator. I would never kick up a fuss. But internally, I was quite angry and quite resentful, and I knew something was wrong, and yet I just didn't know what it was. I knew I wasn't in alignment. I wasn't living in harmony. And I thought, well, while I don't really know exactly what I need to be in alignment with, I'm obviously not getting something right. So I went on a journey over several years of self-discovery. And one thing that really helped me in this alignment was being able to speak what I thought. And I found that by speaking what I thought, I spoke myself into existence. I think that's a really powerful way of living out your inner being, so that's in alignment to how you live in the world. It's challenging because suddenly you say what you think. You can get in an argument or two. You can cause conflict. You can get negative feedback. What are people going to think of me now that I've tried to express who I was? The other useful part of that for me was starting to observe what I said in conversation. What was I actually saying? Did I actually mean what I was saying? Or was I trying to impress? Was I trying to win the argument? Was I trying to get a point across? Was I truly being and living out my inner being? And so I just started watching myself, and this helped me try and understand who I was. It isn't smooth sailing, and it hasn't been smooth sailing, but I believe it is. These two aspects are one of the most important ways to really become in alignment. So, ladies and gentlemen, I don't think we need to stand up every day and give a speech on who we are or what we think should change in the world. But we have an opportunity with every conversation that we have to live out this alignment, this harmony. We have an opportunity to find that wholeness by simply speaking what we think. I mean, what's the alternative? The alternative is to say nothing or lie. So I know what I want to do. One way I like to think about it is that every encounter with another person is an encounter with another soul where you have an opportunity to participate in something special, whereby just humbly speaking your truth, maybe you can shift the world to a slightly better place and find yourself living in harmony, not only in yourself, but in the world around you. So getting back to what Paul Young said, which is wholeness is when the way of your being aligns with the truth of your being. What is my true being? Well, I'm honest, I'm empathetic, I'm cheeky, and I'm persistent. And my wish is that I try and bring this out in every conversation that I have. So, who are you? What is your true being? What is your wholeness? My wish is that you go away and you also find that alignment when you speak and find yourself in a new harmony.
So harmony is a painting executed with deliberate skills. Imagine a painting created only in burnt umber. For those of you who aren't painters, that's a rust colour. Now I'm talking no white, no tonal variation, no opposites and no contrast. How dull and lifeless it would be. How lacking in technique, skills, and dare I say passion. How disharmonious. Mr. Toastmaster, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a watercolourist. I love to create wildly colourful paintings, and I love to stretch myself by trying something that's a challenge. My current challenge is capturing action at the beach. Capturing families enjoying the fun of the water, the sun and the sand. I have to draw fast. Children don't stand still at the beach, it's too much fun. That's just the start. At home, I start splashing paint about, putting the darks against the white, makes the light pop. Dragging a semi-dry brush across the paper lays down broken colour. The left white makes the ocean sparkle with reflected light. Laying ultramarine, cobalt and jade over yellow makes the reflection of the sand shine through the water. Pairing opposites in colour draws the eye to the focal point of the people. These things, these skills create overall harmony and movement in a painting. Now, relationships are very like painting. How dull we'd be if everyone across the world was white Anglo-Saxon Australian. There'd be no contrast, no passion, no differences, no potential for harmony, nothing to shine a light on our strengths and weaknesses. Imagine if every restaurant in Australia only served Aussie food, oh, whatever that is. No laksa, no masaka, no mee goreng, no pad thai, no biryani. Woe is me. There'd be no use for Uber Eats. Boring, boring, boring. And that's just the food. Recently, I completed a unit of study called Christianity and Culture. To understand Christianity deeply, we were tasked with interviewing a person from a different religion and different culture. The exercise required listening and seeking to uncover the layers of belief, values and principles of their religion that created a portrait of who they were. Different religious beliefs frequently elicit passionate opposition and conflict. when we start arguing our views. It was going to be a challenge, and despite years in a people industry, I was very nervous about this particular assignment. Now, the person I was going to interview, I'd known for 2 years. We'd splashed around with painting together. In interviewing her, I found, sadly, I really hadn't known her at all. We had fun and it was fascinating in the discussion. It turned out we had family experiences in common, despite the fact that she lived in Singapore and I'd grown up in France in the southeast. There were many contrasts in religious beliefs, but I found what she told me really intriguing. I learned so much about her, and she allowed me to uncover a picture of why she believed what she did.
I didn't understand that.
My respect for her beliefs grew over the weeks, and she took me to her favourite Malaysian restaurant. There we experienced together the best Malaysian food. And guess what? It was just round the corner from home. Whilst learning about her, I learned so much about myself, developed my questioning and listening skills. It also clarified what I believed, and yet we remained in lovely harmony. It skilled me in being receptive to relating to people from other cultures in the most simple way. Ask questions about them, be interested, and I was amazed what I could find out. It was so easy and broadened my understanding. So if we are seeking harmony, whether it's in our paintings, in our personal relationships, friendships, or even on a global scale, could it be just this simple? So firstly, appreciate that contrast or difference is necessary for an amazing painting, an amazing relationship, or even an amazing world. Secondly, paintings or relationships would be very boring if we were all the same. So welcome people, welcome different food or even someone with different core beliefs into your circle of experience without judgment. And thirdly, to successfully navigate difference, engage, learn the skills, listen humbly, and openly accept what's important to them without any agenda. And like my paintings, stretch yourself and have a go. If you follow my advice, you too can achieve harmony in a special way in your tiny small piece of the world. Mr. Toth.
Hi friends, I'm going to speak about harmony in the form of 2 parts in a number of ways. Right now, we're seeing an invasion of a country without provocation. From my point of view, as this news progresses, hour by hour, minute by minute, day by day, there's an almost overwhelming feeling of frustration. What can we do about it as individuals? What can individual countries even do about this at this point? There seems to be a force of nature involved in these conflicts, like the world wars. It's frustrating to be in the midst of this disharmony, this coming chaos. What has brought about this position from Putin? One way of looking at it, my way of looking at it today, is he has an idea in his head about empire, an idea from the Russian Empire that he learned and holds to and wants to maintain. Everything that's happened since the dissolution of the Soviet Union has broken that. He sees it as broken because that is his idea of Russia and all those countries. But he persists in that idea, and it's conflict against those who have a different idea. Simple notion, perhaps. He's trying to make reality conform to his mind. It needs to be reconciled. And in conflicts, we talk about reconciliation and mediation. What can we do, though? I said earlier, well, almost nothing, but the foundation of everything that goes on in the world that's important to us is each of us as individuals and our influence on everyone else we encounter. Can we start at home with ourselves and increasing harmony within ourselves? Maybe you don't think you are disrupted or in chaos, but I bet you are at some point. I'm someone who is probably known as quite calm, but I've always had a certain level of anxiety. It's just a matter of how you see it. And to me, anxiety is two parts, is the mind in two parts. It's split. You're trying to see something happen, and it's not happening, like Vladimir Putin, and you're keeping on trying the same behavior to resolve it. And that might be something you learned as a child, like not talking back, or talking back all the time, or fighting. You have the same patterns, and you are denying your experience, which is that it doesn't work. This goes on even within that, just within our mind. It doesn't need to involve the external reality. It's like we have two minds. We talk about mastering ourselves, perhaps, at times, but doesn't that sound silly? How many selves have I got? I feel like I've just got one, but we all know, really, we're not totally in control of our minds. Isn't that a strange thing? We have one brain, one mind. What we really are aware of is consciousness, awareness. The Zen Buddhists and some philosophers, as well as some scientists, have developed a view of the mind that can help with this. And that is that there's really pretty much just one mind, one self. And that is a self that is advanced, complex, unpredictable, and almost impossible to know. You can think of it as the unconscious. Some people might call it God or something. But it's most of what we are mentally is invisible to us. Yet it's the source of everything. Every thought you have isn't made up by you right now. The next sentence I say, I don't know what it's going to be, but it will happen. Try not thinking of something, like a lemon. You just saw a lemon, tasted a lemon. You're not in control of your thoughts. And you're not in control of even your decisions. This starts to get very scary. Measurements have been done on the nervous system to show that if you're asked to raise your hand, the muscles in your arm react before you're aware of it, of having made the choice to raise your hand. Very unsettling that there's something else making the decision in you, presumably, before you're aware of it. This can make sense, though. The unconscious is the source of all your thoughts, all your feelings, all your reactions, your moods, your ideas. So what's left? What's left, and I'm here steering towards the philosopher Daniel Dennett, is a monitor, feedback loop, a little mirror. The conscious mind can be thought of as a little, not very shiny mirror. And this mirror reflects the mind back to itself so that the mind can get feedback. It goes into a long argument about this. To take more of a Buddhist idea, the mind is nothing. The conscious mind is not the self. You are pure awareness And everything that happens, your thoughts, your perceptions, are things that simply arise, come up in your awareness. So we're kind of floating through all this. When you adopt this sort of state, if you can learn this by whatever it means, there is nothing to be in conflict with, because everything is outside of you, everything simply happens. You can make a choice at each instant what you react to, what you and maybe even what you think about it, or you can not. And that gives you a great freedom, great sense of peace. There is no choice of harmony, because if it sounds so silly, if your consciousness is nothing and everything is outside of it, you cannot be in conflict with yourself. This is not a solution to war. It's not a solution to all disharmony. But it is amongst developing self-awareness of the moment, being in the moment, is a way of stepping out of the conflicts we create, or that seem to be around us, or that we imagine. We can begin with this with ourselves, and who knows, we may be able to spread more harmony in the world this way. Just a Toastmaster.